Okay. Welcome everyone to the psychology division. We have 4 presenters in this division, and at the end of each presentation, we'll take questions from the judges and then the audience. You may ask your questions through the chat or through the Zoom raise hand feature, and then wait to be called on. Before we begin the presentation, can the judges please briefly introduce themselves and mention their research field?
Hi, everyone. My name's Morgan. I'm one of the judges or the judge today. I am a third-year graduate student in the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience at Baylor. I work in the mind-body medicine research lab with Dr. Gary Elkins. So my research interests include mind-body interventions, specifically hypnosis for different health outcomes like sleep or women's health. So yeah, that's just a little about me.
Okay, great. So our first presentation is from Serlene from UT Austin. So Serlene, you can begin when you're ready and your time starts as soon as you start.
Awesome. Let me just make sure I can share my screen properly. Okay, and then please just let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Awesome. So thank you everyone for being here. My name is Charlene. I'm an undergraduate psychology student from UT Austin. My research currently is on the topic of handedness, and I'm trying to use it as a predictor of risk-taking behavior and executive function performance. So to start my presentation, I wanted to take y'all on a journey through history. So our first stop starts with this man. His name is Caesaree Lombroso. I don't know if anybody knows who he is, but Mr. Caesaree was a very prominent and respected man in the 1900s. He was a surgeon, a psychiatrist, anthropologist, among other things.
Oh, sorry, Charlene. I don't think we can see your presentation. Does anyone else have that problem where they only see, we see audience window and it says that you should enter the full screen mode?
Oh, do you see it now?
Yes, okay, that's perfect now. Okay, sorry, you can restart.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so as I said, my research is on handedness and risk-taking behavior as a function of executive performance. So I'm going to take you all on a journey through history. First stop, like I said, is with this man. His name is Caesaree Lombroso. He was a very prominent man in the 1900s. He was a surgeon, psychiatrist, anthropologist, and to this day, he's research. The only problem, however, was that some of his research was an attempt to bring some traits and paint some traits in a bad light. For example, he had a very prominent paper on the topic of handedness, and he wrote that handedness was a predictor of pathology. He believed that certain genetic traits were a predictor of biological abnormality. So if you were left-handed, for example, he would claim that you were much more likely to have psychological issues. And he also believed that it was a way to predict criminal behavior. That a lot of the prisoners were left-handed, so he jumped to the conclusion that left-handedness was associated with certain kinds of behaviors that were not very moral. The problem was he didn't really base his research on empirical science. He didn't have a lot of data, comparative data, so he basically made a conclusion without very proper scientific support. And his research ended up gaining a lot of attention, though. So it spread a lot of misinformation regarding left-handedness. And to this day, there's a lot of people who use his research to claim that left-handed people are more likely to behave a certain way, and that's not really seen in a positive way. So that's the root of my question related the devil and that, you know, you should avoid or that you're more likely to be really intelligent. So I figured that was a good opportunity to investigate this question. So you might be wondering, well, so what? There are a lot of traits that are controversial out there, a lot of traits that people might not agree or disagree on in regards to behavior. The issue with handedness, however, and that's where I got my background and I will introduce my project, is that handedness is a really important trait for the neuroscience, neurological development of humans, because it can help us understand how our brain is lateralized and how we develop certain functions, for example, like language processing. So left-handedness, like I said, has been studied over the years, but a consensus as to its evolutionary role and its origin has not been achieved. Roughly 10% of the population is left or mixed-handed. So this raises questions, right? Why are only 10% of the people left or mixed-handed if there are so many other possibilities? So it should be a 50-50 if it was just like any other trait. There are correlations between, like I said, handedness and genetic heritability. So people with left-handed parents are more likely to be left-handed, but there are studies with monozygotic twins that show that sometimes the twins with the same genetic load have different handedness. So there are other interactions that might be the source of this trait. So for example, in uterus behavior or exposure to certain types of chemicals while in the womb. And this also gives the suggestion that there are different possibilities, environmental origins that could also cause this diversion in handedness in humans. And analyzing this trait can give us more information on how our brains are lateralized and how our behaviors develop through life since the womb. And a lot of people don't really like pursuing this topic on research because it's very controversial. People don't really agree on it. A lot of studies with MRI will exclude left-handed people, so we don't really have a lot of data, and scientists are a little bit afraid of pursuing this kind of research. So I figured this was a good opportunity to try and shed some light in the topic. So like I said, my study aims to analyze possible behavior implications of brain lateralization and hemisphere specialization, most specifically highlighting correlations between handedness, decision-making, and executive function performance, which is very correlated with learning, attention throughout development. And investigating the origins of handedness from a behavioral lens might provide further understanding of brain connectivity and functioning. So it's something that could really bring us a lot of information on the field. So my research questions, does left-handedness correlate with higher willingness to engage in risky behavior? And this goes back to Mr. Lombroso. Like I said first, he claimed that left-handedness could predict criminal behavior. Since I can't really study criminal behavior, I approached it from the perspective of willingness to engage in risky and make risky decisions. And so also our psychometric tests, such as the Stroop test, able to predict brain connectivity and cognition with lateralization indexes. So my methods, I'm going to use surveys to gather demographic data. So I'm interested in knowing, are these left-handed?
I think your slides aren't changing.
Oh, which slide are you at?
Right now we're still on the Caesaree Lombroso and the pathology. Oh yes, we see it now. Yes.
Oh, should I go back and I'm not sure why it wasn't showing. Should I just continue then?
Yeah, so I think we were still on that first slide. So if you want to just pick up where you feel would be a good place.
So I'm just gonna go ahead and glance over the slides real quick. So I mentioned the cultural context, the background and introduction, I'm sorry, y'all. I didn't know it wasn't switching. I don't know why, because on my screen it was switching. Here's my summary and purpose and my research questions. And then this is where I introduce my methods. And this is the slide where I'm actually on. Just a second. Let me know if you can see it. Okay, so here's an example of the Stroop test, which is one of the methods I'm hoping to use to measure inhibitory control. This is important because it can give us insight on how good left-handed people might be at controlling impulses as a function of cognition. To measure handedness, I'm actually going to use the Edinburgh Handedness Inventory, the EHI. It's usually how scientists measure handedness because handedness usually goes beyond just writing or which hand do you use to punch somebody. So there are many ways to measure it. So for my hypothesis, since I'm still in the process of developing my IRB review, right now I'm working with these two hypotheses. It's either basically that there will be a difference in handedness, cognitive inhibition, and willingness to engage in risky behavior according to handedness, or there will not. So thank you so much for your attention. I have my references over here if anybody's interested. And at this point, I'm ready to open for questions.
Yes, so Morgan, do you have any questions for Celine?
Yeah, one question that came up, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about why you chose to use the Stroop task to measure the inhibition.
Yeah, so the Stroop test is a really good way to measure inhibition in general, but considering I'm measuring lateralization, it can give insight of which side of the brain you're using the most, or since I can't access MRI studies right now, it can really give you an index without seeing the person's brain of how their brain is functioning. So it's a really direct measure that can give a lot of context in different areas, and it was why I chose it.
Awesome, that's great. I did not know it could give any insight into lateralization, so that's great.
It can give a little bit, and it's good for especially different people in different developmental stages. I'm hoping to use young adults, but I might have people that are older as well, so it can be a good measure like that.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Celine. It was very interesting. Next, we have Catherine and Isabella from Baylor University. So you guys can share your screen and I'll start the timer whenever you start.
Okay, thank you. I'm getting this ready. Okay, can you guys see our screen?
Yes.
Okay. Well, my name is Isabella and this is Catherine, and we're really excited to share our research with y'all today.
All right, hello everyone. Thank you so much for your attention. Today, our research focuses on science education and was conducted with the help of the Department of Biology here at Baylor University. In 2019, few people knew what Zoom was. Here we are today, of course. But undergraduates participating in the iBears program in fall of 2019 became very familiar very quickly. All right. Inclusive Biologists Exploring Research with Students, a National Science Foundation funded program, utilizes undergraduate students and tasks them with empowering 4th through 9th grade public school students to complete a science research project. iBears aims to equip undergraduate science students, particularly those in minorities, with professional skills. The students learn valuable 21st century skills, including digital literacy and communication. iBears spreads its vision by connecting participating undergraduates, faculty, administrators, and science teachers to improve research experiences and virtual mentorship in STEM education. Part of IBER's work comes from undergraduates here at Baylor, leading elementary and middle school science students through a research project virtually through Zoom. Undergraduates guide students through the scientific method, from the hypothesis to the experiment to the research poster presentation done by the 9-year-old scientists themselves. Undergraduates learn important skills in science education, and elementary students discover how to complete an entire research project, encouraging student interest in science fields. For this research project, which we conducted in 2021, we were granted access to these video recordings of the undergraduates leading their classrooms each week during that fall semester in 2019. These two classrooms for our research, we chose two classrooms focusing our interest on the differences and question styles between the men and women undergraduates students leading the sessions. When we study learning in classrooms, one tool educators utilize is questioning. Many questions are common in elementary classrooms, such as, who remembers what a hypothesis is? There are many different ways to phrase a question that require various levels of cognitive thinking. Bloom's taxonomy, developed by Benjamin Bloom in 2010, displays a hierarchy in the 6 different questions types he outlined, with questions requiring higher cognitive thinking at the top of the pyramid, such as questions requiring the students to create, evaluate, or analyze. These are more abstract questions, such as, how would we solve this problem? Questions demanding less cognitive processing were questions requiring the students to apply their current knowledge, understand a concept, or recall previous knowledge. Bloom's taxonomy has been used in numerous research publications to analyze ways of questioning. We also found this taxonomy helpful in exploring the differences and how each undergraduate questioned their classroom, and we will return to these categories momentarily.
6 undergraduate individuals were the subjects of our study, including 3 men and 3 women. The gender of the individuals was determined by traditional expressions of gender according to appearance. The study analyzed 2 science classrooms during a 15-week semester with 1 video recording per week. The timing was about 30 to 45 minutes of interaction between the undergraduates and the science classroom. Each question posed by an undergraduate was documented based on the number of words used, question type according to Bloom's taxonomy, and the gender of the questioner. Data was then calculated by averaging the number of words used per question by each gender, the percentage of question category out of the total questions asked, and the percent each gender asked from a single category. Using descriptive statistical analysis, there was not a significant difference in the average words per question between male and female undergraduates, with an average of 10.3 words each and less than a 1% difference. In total, about 47.9% of the questions asked were categorized as recall, with an even split between genders. The women undergraduates asked more upper level questions according to Bloom's taxonomy compared to the men. Out of the total questions asked, women asked approximately 4.5% create questions and 4.23% evaluate questions, while men asked approximately 1.41% create questions and 2.47% evaluate questions, as you can see in our graphs. Additionally, the total questions asked between the men and women was very similar, with women asking 144 questions and the men asking 140. It's important to note that these undergraduates are studying science rather than education. They have not been trained on how to teach or question the 5th graders beyond this singular class. Given that the meetings are a week apart, it's logical that the recall category made up almost half of the questions. As we said, 2 classes were studied, one with 2 men and 1 woman, and one with 2 women and 1 man. Further research could analyze differences when groups are made up of only men or only women. Also, further research could investigate differences in questioning between education majors and traditional science majors. Bloom's taxonomy's level of questions become more abstract as you move up the pyramid, as we've discussed earlier. The women students were more drawn to these higher cognitive questions than the men, who asked significantly more explain questions and less evaluate and create questions. These findings are consistent with an article titled "The Effect of Laboratory and Lecture Teaching Methods on Cognitive Achievement in Integrated Science," in which male students preferred a laboratory option, which is less abstract than its alternative, a lecture option. In another article, Teacher Questions to Male and Female Toddlers, the higher cognitive questions were shown to cause a more significant increase in comprehension than questions from the lower levels. Further research may investigate whether abstract questions cause a more significant increase in understanding and recall in other age groups as well. So it appears that women undergraduates tend to ask more abstract questions than their counterparts, but there's much more research that can be done on this topic as we advance science education in primary and secondary schools. And we just wanted to say a thank you to Dr. Harville and Alex St. Louis, who guided us through this research project, and to the iBears program as a whole that is helping science education improve across the country.
Thank you for your attention.
We can take any
Thank you
questions that you have.
Oh, yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. If Morgan had any questions.
Great presentation. I was curious, it might help if you can go back to the graphs slide. And those are great like visual aids that really helps to be able to see the graphs that you guys have here. I noticed that the only question category that men asked more of was explain. Do you have any ideas about maybe why that is, or why we might see that pattern?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think we kind of wanted the same thing. Like we said before, lots of the questions consisted of recall, just being that they were so far apart, like week to week, asking the students to recall what they discussed last week and such. But yeah, the men did ask more explain questions, and we don't have a great answer for that other than they were very similar in the way that they were asked with the recall, I think. Does that make sense? Of like explaining what a hypothesis is instead of asking, do you remember what a hypothesis is?
Right.
That distinction is a little fuzzy because it's, it's not a clear distinction, but I think that they were more drawn to just explain instead of the word remember or recall.
Right.
Also, one other note is that when you look at the numbers of the questions, if you combine the top three categories, the number of questions that the women asked would be around the same as the number of explained questions if added together. If that makes sense as well. So it can be a little confusing looking at the graph, but the numbers all do add up as well.
Right. Yeah. That's great.
Did anyone from the audience or fellow presenters have any questions they want to add or comment? Okay, well, that was a great presentation by Catherine and Isabella from Baylor. Our next presentation will be from Sophia Alvarez from Texas A&M. So you can go ahead and share your screen when you are ready.
Okay. So what are you seeing now? Are you looking at the presentation?
Yes, we do see your slide, Nature Connectedness, right?
Great. Just let me do this. Okay, so my name is Sofia Alvarez, and I'll be presenting my study, which was Nature Connectedness and Meaning in Life. So what is nature connectedness? We define it as the ability to connect with nature through our senses and the ability to immerse ourselves in the experience of being in nature. The relationship between nature connectedness and psychological well-being has been widely studied. It has been noted that being connected to nature enlarges one's self-concept and builds a sense of belongingness to the greater schema of life. Also, experiences in nature are usually enjoyable ones, which increases the positive feelings in a person's life, especially if they're recurrently doing activities in nature. And people also reported that natural environments are more emotionally restorative than man-made environments. So people tend to want this connection with nature for their well-being. But for my presentation, I want to focus specifically in a facet of well-being, which is meaning in life. Are the slides changing all right? Do you see the slides well? Like, are they changing? Yeah, did it change?
Yes, now we're on the primary determinant slide. Yeah.
Just wanted to check. So to start, I wanna start with this definition that I love about meaning in life. This was defined actually by my advisor in one of the research papers that he published, and it says, lives may be experienced as meaningful when they are felt to have significance beyond the trivial or momentary, to have purpose, or to have coherence that transcends chaos. So there's 4 facets of meaning in life that we used in our study. The perception of coherence are the feelings that one's life makes sense. Purpose is in having a reason of why we do something. Mattering is the feeling that one's actions are important to others and to the bigger picture. And experiential appreciation is the power to connect to the present moment and create value from it. Our research question is, how does connectedness to nature relate to the different facets of meaning in life and to the global experience of meaning? And we wanted to see how exactly does nature connectedness relates to meaning. So did it make you feel like you have more purpose, or that you appreciate things more? But what we mainly hypothesize is that connectedness to nature leads to meaning in life primarily through experiential appreciation. We conducted 2 studies. The first study consisted in 402 college students at Texas A&M who completed a survey with different items. And the different items for experiential appreciation, for example, one of them was, I have a great appreciation for the beauty of life. One of the items of purpose was, I have a good sense of what I'm trying to accomplish in life. One of the items for mattering is, even considering how big the universe is, I can say that my life matters. We assessed coherence with items like, I can make sense of the things that happen in my life. We assessed overall meaning with, my entire existence is full of meaning. And we assessed nature connectedness with items like, I often feel kinship with plants and animals. Study 2 was basically a quasi-experiment where we tried to create a natural grouping based on where people were at the time. So there were 2 conditions. The first one was the gardens, which is a public garden and green space in Texas A&M campus. And the second was an open parking lot at Texas A&M, which is near the gardens. And we handed participants the same survey that we used in study 1, but with less items. So nature connectedness has been linked a lot to well-being and positive affect. Some results in other studies show that people who are more connected to nature have higher eudaimonic well-being. I hope I'm saying eudaimonic correctly, but eudaimonic well-being makes reference to living a life as your authentic self and fulfilling your best potential. And other findings of other studies show meaning in life fully mediated the relationship between nature connectedness and well-being. And exposure to nature increased connectedness to nature, positive emotions, and ability to reflect on a life problem. The results for study 1, these are the preliminary results, and we looked at correlations, and we found that connectedness to nature was correlated with all the facets of meaning in life except mattering. But especially nature connectedness was correlated with experiential appreciation. It was highly correlated with this. And you can also see that all 4 of the facets have a really strong relationship to general meaning and to each other. Here we can see the results of a regression analysis, and we wanted to see which one is a unique predictor of connectedness to nature. So we used connectedness to nature as an outcome variable, and we found that experiential appreciation uniquely predicts connectedness to nature, which means that feeling connected to nature makes you appreciate experiences more. And in this R-squared, this tells us that from all the scores on connectedness to nature, 12% of the variability in those scores is explained by experiential appreciation. Here we can see a mediation analysis. The predictor is connectedness to nature and the mediator is experiential appreciation. So basically what we find is that connectedness to nature leads to experiential appreciation, and experiential appreciation leads to general meaning in life. But connectedness to nature and general meaning in life don't really have a relationship when we control for experiential appreciation. And we can also see this on the direct pathway from connectedness to nature and meaning in life. You can see that this number is not significant. So it has to go through experiential appreciation in order for these 2 to have a relationship. In study 2, it's still in progress, so we just collapsed over conditions because we haven't collected enough people yet, but everything points to similar results to those of study 1. So here we can see that all the facets of meaning are correlated, but to nature connectedness, but especially experiential appreciation again. So general meaning is also pretty high for all the facets. Here we can see a regression analysis similar to that of study 1, and yeah, basically experiential appreciation is significant, which means that it predicts nature connectedness, and the R squared tells us that from all those scores in connectedness to nature, experiential appreciation explains 25% of the variability in those scores. And this is another of the a mediation analysis where we can see that nature connectedness only relates to general meaning in life when it goes through experiential appreciation. Again, similar to the study 1, actually, yeah, the results were replicated, meaning that we can observe that nature connectedness leads to experiential appreciation leads to meaning in life, but nature connectedness and general meaning in life don't really have a relationship when we control for experiential appreciation. The purpose of this study was to show that experiential appreciation has a key role in the experience of nature connectedness and the relationship of meaning in life. We, of course, know that meaning is very important. First, let's face it, we're humans, and most of us, at least, like to be happy and have a meaning to do things, so it's important. And also, it's important for psychological functioning and overall well-being. Scientists believe that connectedness to nature leads to well-being, including meaning in life. But this study is the first to show what exact component of meaning in life is connectedness to nature tied to, which is experiential appreciation. And another purpose of this study is to add to the still growing body of literature that experiential appreciation may be a key aspect of meaning in life, because the key aspects that are usually seen in studies are coherence, purpose, and mattering, but experiential appreciation is still being tested. So in our study specifically, experiential appreciation completely mediates the relationship between connectedness to nature and meaning in life, which also shows the importance of experiential appreciation being a part of the facets of overall meaning in life. But more research should be done in this topic to determine which factors should encompass meaning in life and the relationship between nature connectedness and meaning. Some limitations for study 1, for example, most were college students, which means that it's more probable that they show a high meaning in life because they're studying what they like, they're doing things that they like, they're doing things that are good for their future. And this, yeah, they reported high meaning. And also the results are not entirely generalizable because they're college students. And in study 2, a big limitation was that we didn't really see the effects of the location of the locations that we use, so the parking lot and the gardens. And this could be for various reasons, including that all participants completed the scales outside. So even though the parking lot is not the prettiest place, there are still natural things like the sky. So also a lot of participants reported having been in the gym before coming to the parking lot, which might influence the reporting of meaning because they're releasing dopamine, they're having different sport, they're doing different sports activities. So that may influence their perception of meaning in that moment. And other participants in the parking lot condition also reported that they were in the gardens before they were in the parking lot, which would explain some of the null results because those people were exposed to a more natural setting before they were in the parking lot, which means that the more connected to nature, they were more connected to nature, and of course, reported higher experiential appreciation and meaning in life, even if they were in the parking lot. Yeah, these are my references, and thank you so much for listening. Do you have any questions?
Great job. Great presentation. One question I had was, I'm curious if you have any ideas for next studies, or if you had to do a follow-up study, what would you do?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I completely missed the slide. Do you see the future directions?
Oh. Well, this is perfect then.
So first of all, we would like to improve some of the aspects of the study that we did. So for example, choose a separate location. So not choosing the parking lot that's next to the gardens, but maybe choosing a parking lot that it's closed, or that it's near like other buildings or man-made things, or maybe even choosing to make people fill the survey inside a building. And we are planning to run a full lab experiment over the summer, where we would actually have people look at pictures of nature or of buildings and then complete the scales we used.
Oh yeah, that'd be very interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, good. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Charlene had a question.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, I'm not sure if you asked that or if you have any data on that, but I was wondering if you found any correlations between the results you found and religiosity. So which kind of beliefs those people have that might be connected to their perspective of how they're connected to nature. Do you think that has any influence on their responses?
It definitely may have influence. We didn't assess for religiosity, but I've seen some of other research do like assess for religiosity religiosity. Do you say it like that? And I think it definitely would affect, because there's evidence that shows that people that are more religious are correlated with having higher meaning in life. So it could affect, and that would be also interesting to see. Maybe ask people if they're part of a religion, and how religious are they, like from using a scale, for example, because there's people who identify like as being Catholic, but they don't really practice it. So that would also depend on, like, that would also influence the results, right?
Interesting. Thank you for answering.
Thank you.
Okay, so our division is supposed to end at 11, but if it's okay with everyone, especially the judge, is it okay if Charlene presented again, because she had technical difficulties, and I feel like her presentation would be enhanced with her slides.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine, as long as Charlene is okay with doing that. Not required by any means. Whatever you'd be most comfortable with is fine with me.
And before we do that, would you guys like to take a screenshot for HOT, the psychology division? Like,
sure.
Yeah, so you can do a stick or horns up, or gig Okay, so let me get my screenshot ready, and then on 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, perfect. So yeah, since the other two presenters, if you want to stick around, but Charlene, you can present.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry, y'all, that I had so many issues. I don't know why it wasn't switching.
That's perfectly okay.
Let me know if you don't see it switching now. I don't know what's wrong, but yeah. So thank you so much again for bearing with me. My research is on handedness, and I'm using it as a predictor of risk-taking behavior and executive function performance. Before we start, I want to take you on a quick journey through history. This man you see on the screen, his name is Caesaree Lombroso. He was a very prominent man in the early 1900s. He was a psychologist, psychiatrist, a surgeon, anthropology, so he was many things. And to this day, he's considered by many the father of criminology. He had many interesting scientific papers published, and one of them was on the topic of the left-handedness as a pathological trait. Mr. Lombroso believed that left-handedness could predict criminal behavior. He had very strong opinions, even though he didn't really have empirical data on the topic. He really claimed that there was a causal association between being left-handed and having a predisposition to becoming a criminal and having certain pathological illnesses, for example, schizophrenia and other conditions that were not very well seen back in the day, and to this day are very have very multiple opinions in the social aspect. So his research gained a lot of attention, and it ended up causing a lot of stigmatization throughout time. So to this day, a lot of people quote his research as a source of proof that being left-handed is not a positive thing in regards to being human. So as a result of his scientific data and other aspect of society, there were cross-cultural preconceived notions developed throughout time. So in many cultures, left-handedness to this day is not well seen. There are people who believe that left-handed people are more inclined to being musically talented, and others say that they're better at learning languages. Some people will say that it's the hand of the devil and that you shouldn't let your kids develop the trait of left-handedness. Some people will say that left-handed people are smarter. Others will say that they are not as smart as the right-handed counterpart. So there are really diverging opinions out there in many different cultures, but the science of it is really, really diverse as well. And some research find conflicting results. So even scientists can't really get to an agreement on what is the correct answer, and they really find it problematic to study this trait because they find that the results will be questioned more. So at this point, you might be wondering, so what? You know, a lot of traits are diverging and results are conflicting. Why should we care about left-handedness? So left-handedness can give us a lot of insight on brain functioning. And although many scientists don't really give the trait a lot of attention, it really is directly correlated to how our brain is lateralized and how our hemispheres are develop their specialization. So I said, as my background that, you know, it has been studied over the years, but there's no consensus on its evolutionary role. And roughly 10% of the population is left or mixed-handed. So why is that trait not 50-50 like many others? There must be a reason, and we don't really understand why. So I believe that is a great opportunity for research to develop on the topic. And so there are many correlations between handedness and genetic heritability and environmental influence. So for example, there are many twins, monozygotic twins, that develop different handedness despite having the same genetic load. So that is an insight that there are varying opinions and origins of left-handedness, and there's a lot of room for research in the topic. So for my summary and purpose, so my study aims to analyze possible behavior implications of brain lateralization and hemisphere specialization. So most specifically highlighting correlations between handedness, decision-making, and executive function performance. And executive function is the specialty of the brain that studies learning, attention, and a lot of developmental concepts that are part of human experience. And the purpose is to better understand the origins of handedness from a behavioral perspective. For my research questions, I'm trying to understand if left-handedness correlate with higher willingness to engage in risky behavior. Since I cannot study criminal behavior, I'm just an undergrad, unfortunately. And I'm also trying to understand if psychometric tests, such as the Stroop test, can predict brain connectivity and performance according to lateralization indexes. Okay, so for my methods, I have #1 surveys to try and understand better of how left-handed people interact with their environment, if their parents are left-handed, and how the genetic component might come out in their experience as a left-handedness as a trait. And I'm also using the Stroop test to measure participants' ability to inhibit cognitive interference. So a little bit more about the Stroop test. Here's an example, a sample, and it works as a measure of inhibitory control. As a function of cognition, it can help me understand a little bit more of what's going on in the brain in a lateralization perspective. Even though I can't really access their brains through MRI, this can give me a little bit of an outsider's perspective. To measure handedness, I'm going to use the Edinburgh Handedness Inventory. It basically gives a lateralization index, which helps me understand how left-handed somebody is or how right-handed they might be, because there's really a spectrum that varies. It doesn't solely depends on how we use your hands to write or to eat. There's a spectrum there. And for my hypothesis, basically I'm working with there will be some correlation between handedness, risky behavior, and executive function performance, or there will not be. I'm still under IRB review, so I'm gonna start collecting my data soon. I have my references over here, and thank you all so much for your attention. And thank you for the chance to present again. I hope the slides change now.
Yes, that was very good. And we have a some audience. So if you guys had any questions or any questions the second time around. Okay. Well, this concludes the psychology division. Thank you all for attending. So you guys are free to go. Except for the judge, please hang around.
Great job, guys. I really enjoyed listening to your presentations.
Thank you. And just to make sure, now we have a little break and then we go to the main room again, right?
Yes, yes.
Thank
So
you.
the schedule should be on the BERST website. Yes, with all the links. And if you guys know, we have our keynote speaker from Harvard Medical School at 1 p.m. I believe. Double check me on that. But yes, you guys are